Okay, look at all that. Slip and tack solution flush out. That's the reason you need to make sure that it's so clean back in there when you're pressure washing. I've got a video on that about how to pressure wash all those edges to make sure that when you flush that water underneath there, it doesn't come back out with a bunch of dirt. How's it going? My name is Brent from Encore PPF and Tint, and today we're going to be working on a 2025 Mazda CX-70. So this is one of the higher end models that has more painted surfaces than your more basic model. So I believe that this is normally like a matte plastic, and so is this part here. But these on this vehicle are painted and they're not in the computer. Womp womp. So those parts we get to bulk. And what we're going to be working on today is the front bumper. I did cut out a kit for this, so we're going to be installing a kit on this. There's this piece here, which I believe has a seam somewhere out in this area. There is a piece for these two parts, and I think that's it. But it's what we're getting to do today. And I think that's all the information I have for this one. So let's go ahead and get started on this. I give that a final little wipe down there. It does wrap underneath quite well, it looks like. And then my guess is that it just goes right to this back edge because there is plastic or rubber back down in there. So I'm guessing it does not go wrap around the back side. All right, then one quick note on this part here. When I installed it, I went right up to this edge here. And actually what they want you to do is go over and wrap around to the back. There is enough space to wrap back there. So do that. When you're putting this on, roll that back edge and wrap it down. So that's what the pattern wants you to do. And I didn't figure that out till much later until I opened the hood. And so this one leaves like it leaves, like it is. But next time I will roll that edge. So sometimes it's hard to tell what they're doing with the kits. You're just kind of guessing, right? So, but anyway, blah, 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 blah. But let's find out. Okay, lay this on here and see what it is going to cover. It needs a decent little, decent amount of stretching from left to right. And kind of interesting that the way that they've set this up is, so it's got quite a bit of finger there to keep that back edge straight. So this must get decent amount of stretch, which helps it wrap underneath. So let's go ahead and tack this down. And then we can start stretching this into place. Okay, so a little bit of tack in there. And let's get our squeegee here. So we want to bring this little rounded edge right to that very edge. And then we also want to make sure we're lined up really well here towards the back. I've got tack solution in there, so it really wants to just straight stick now. Okay, and then I think I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of wrap this part back underneath, and then just make sure you get this rounded corner here squeeged out really well. Because like I've said 4 million times, very easy to leave moisture on those edges, and they will end up drying with the air pocket. All right, so now let's get rid of this finger here. Okay, pre-tacking just a little bit, put a little bit more soap in there. And then when we pull this, it's automatically going to want to shift this piece of paint protection film up. So this finger down here will be to hold this in place and pull it back down. Okay, and then I'm gonna just put some pressure on underneath there with this finger and hope that that makes that spot tack down. So something like that is looking good. And then we'll go ahead and put a mist on that And we'll go ahead and squeegee this out. So that top edge is lined up really nice, so I want to get that down. And then you can see there by when I was squeegeeing, I was kind of making a finger, which means it's probably stretching the material a little bit. So I want to take that finger up and out like that. And then if it keeps popping up, that's because I'm just hanging over the edge the tiniest amount, and we'll come back and add some tack solution to that and give it a swipe and hold. Okay. So to right there looks good. And what we're gonna do now then is go over to the other side, and we're gonna stretch this all the way over there to make sure that we're lining up good. And there's that swipe and hold on that part to get it to stay down. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this back up so we can get some more slip under there. And then what I'm gonna do is pull this over into place. I'm gonna put a little tack on this. I'll pull this over into place here. And actually I'm gonna just go like this to line that up. Like that. So what I did is I changed that a little bit. So I'm holding right here. And I'm trying to get that to line up correctly. Right there on the edge. And then my hand here is allowing me to move this up and down and adjust like this as well to get all of this edge here lined up really nicely. So right there, looks like that's lined up really well. Go ahead and squeegee some of this out underneath my hand. And that adjusted this a little bit, so let's fix that. Pull this back and get that line back up across this back side here. Okay, now we might have a little distortion right here because of where my hand was, so I'm going to go ahead and check that for pre-tacking by just lifting that up and then laying it back down. And then let's make sure that we're looking really good here on this back edge, and then we'll go across towards the middle. So we can go ahead and squeegee this out. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and lift this up. So we're a little tacking this so we can get it over that bend right there. And let's make sure that that goes down and stays down, so we'll get some tack in that as well. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and take that right over that edge, swipe and hold. And then let's do the same thing back here. Okay. Now what we want to do is make sure that all this top is lining up really good as we come across. Okay, something like that. And we'll go ahead and bring this stuff over this way, because that's all dry. We can't take anything out that direction. And then we'll go ahead and bring this stuff over this way, meet in the middle, and then we'll squeegee the center out here. So I'll take some of this up and out the top, and then we'll take all of this out, the rest of this out this bottom part here. Let's go ahead and get over this bend here. Okay, so we've got pretty much this whole face, the face of this is done. And so that's looking really good. And that's what we want. I mean, you really don't want any marks in this or stretch marks or anything. So get this part all laid out first, and then now we can deal with this part that's wrapping underneath. Okay, so let's go ahead and get some tack solution in this. And let's actually, I'm gonna go ahead and start on this other side. And the reason for that is that a lot more of this is still popping up. And so I wanna get this stuff down. Anything that's more visible, I'd like to deal with that part first. So let's get all that slip solution completely rinsed, sprayed out with this tack. There we go. And then first things first, we'll want to get everything off of the face. And then we'll start taking this down. Okay, much better. Let's do a swipe and hold there, make sure that's all staying down. Okay, now let's go for this finger right here. And I call it a finger because there's definitely a little bit of extra material there. I could see that it's wanting to pop up just right here. So I'm gonna take this and do a swipe and hold here on this edge, basically on that edge there. And there's a little bit of contour to this. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to this red squeegee. Just make sure you use plenty of pressure to get this stuff that you squeegee it out with plenty of pressure. Okay, we'll go ahead and take this stuff back and we'll work our way over to this area with the fingers here. Now let's go ahead and start taking this stuff back. And just doing a swipe and hold here. And we are hanging over a little bit. So what that would mean to me is that they did, well, I don't know, that's going down really well. It might mean that they wanted this to hang over a little bit in the back. It's like hard to tell. Okay, we're just taking this stuff the rest of the way back here. It's difficult to get the squeegee underneath there and get that squeegee out really well, so just do your best there. Okay. Okay, so underneath here, that's all looking really good. Okay. Okay, I went ahead and just pulled up here a little bit and was able to push some of that material that was sticking out here back in there, and we'll see how that stays stuck down. Okay, and let's go ahead and spray this stuff out. Okay, and then let's go ahead and squeegee this out. So make sure again that you're getting everything off this face here and wrap or down underneath, and then we can go ahead and start tucking this stuff down. So I'm gonna just try doing a slide chomp there and taking that a bit underneath and then a bit more, and then finally there all the way under. Okay, and then let's see. Now this is it's looking really good. Got a little bit of moisture right here, so I want to take that and push that out to here before we get started pushing all this down. Let's go ahead and get this pulled back. Get some tack in there. And then we can go ahead and roll this under. Okay, and take this stuff back. Just make sure if you're chomping it down like this that you're making sure to get this edge really good. So as you can see, I'm really kind of starting probably like the middle of the edge and then pushing down underneath. Just trying to make sure that we get some really good pressure there. Let's see if we can get a little bit better angle with this camera, because the way that I'm standing, we're not gonna be able to see underneath this part. So let's go along the bend here. And we'll just make sure that we're starting underneath now. So we're gonna do a swipe and hold just as it curls underneath. And then now we'll be able to push this down. I'm going to start over here because I don't want to accidentally push some film over there and create a finger on this edge. Okay. And just good pressure on that. It's a kind of a awkward squeegee right there. Let's get this edge, this corner pushed out really well. Okay, that is looking really good. Got a little finger popping up here. Okay, and I'm just gonna run my finger across this bottom now and make sure that I don't feel anything popping up. All right, great. That looks good. All right, let's go ahead and get this part put on. Make sure we're cleaned off all the way underneath there. There's actually some cutouts in the bumper here, which is interesting. It's like an L shape there and an L shape there. So we'll see if the pattern, oh, it cuts around that. Perfect. All right, so what we're gonna do is start back here, I believe, or should we start in the front here? Actually, let's do this. Let's start up here in the front. All right, and then what we're gonna do is I'm actually going to tack this part here first, and then because there's a body line right here, we'll be able to stretch away from this, and if there was any type of distortion on this stretch, then it would be on that body line, and then it's not gonna be visible. So let's get some mist over here, and then we'll get a little bit of tack on that edge, and then I got a little bit right there, so we might have to pull this back and make sure that this isn't sticking after we get this laid down into place here. Okay, then we'll go ahead and squeegee this down. Oh, wow, that popped off way easier than I would have anticipated that could have happened there. Okay. Okay, that is lined up real good on across the top. So let's go ahead and pull this back. Let's make sure that we're lifted up to that body line. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and stretch over to here now. And as we do that, I'm watching this line here to see what that looks like, and then I'm seeing here that this needs to go up. So I'm gonna take my hand and kind of twist like this, so we get that edge to line up really well, and then we'll deal with this here in a moment. So let's get a little bit of tack solution in here. So, and then there's a little finger here. I'm gonna go ahead and try just kind of pulling this direction. It looks like it could use to come back just a little bit further as well, and that'll help get rid of some of this finger. Okay, now let's get this lined up correctly here. Across this top. Okay. And I was just kind of pushing on this finger to see, make sure it wants to split up, and that we're gonna be able to just push that up and out. Squeegee all this out, at least down to here, and then we'll worry about the underneath in a moment. Take all this rest of this out the top. Okay, I'm actually going to pull this back just a little bit. It wasn't really, oops, wasn't really stuck down that well anyway. Let's get some tack in there so that this will just go down and then stay down. Okay. So we got the bulk of it out, and then we're now just kind of doing a swipe and hold here. So I'm going past the edge, and then I'm pressing into the paint protection film, so I'm just hitting that very edge of it and getting that to stick down. Okay. Let's pull this back a little, get some tack in here. And it's nice, it does cut around that whole area. Somebody was paying attention. Okay, and then there's a little bit of a finger here, and so if we just lay this down, we're gonna have to deal with that. So what I'm gonna do is put a little bit of pull like back with that, and then you can see that lays down much nicer than at that point. And we're gonna squeegee down this part right to my finger like that, and then we'll take this stuff this way. We're gonna just chomp this down. Okay, and let's get that pushed back down. Okay, and then let's take this part over this way. And then, okay, that's staying down this time. I'm just gonna dry that out to make sure it doesn't grab any moisture and pop back up. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and get this way back here pushed down. So it's kind of a funky angle, so what I'm doing here is putting some extra pressure this way on the squeegee to really help get a good pass on that, to make sure we're not leaving anything behind. And then we can go ahead and kind of swipe that up and down, just double checking. That's also helping make sure we didn't leave anything on the bend right there. Okay, so let's get this piece on now. And then we can see here with this part that it will wrap around back behind, and it's got a good nice relief cut in there, which will help all this lay down really nicely. So let's get this lined up and this lined up really well. And then we should also see how this kind of dips down here? We want that to be right at the edge, just like that. And then let's go ahead, you know, it might as well just, let's get some tack in here. I was just gonna squeegee it out, but you know, it's just gonna end up moving around on us, and then I'm gonna be repositioning it and starting over. So let's get a little tack in there, like that. And then we can go ahead and squeegee this out. Okay. And now what I'm gonna do is kind of hold, let's see, we need some stretch to get rid of this little bit of extra material here. So what we can do is kind of lay this part down like that, and then we can grab this back corner and pull that way. So not straight back, not straight down, and not straight back, but kind of at an angle, and that'll get rid of this, and there's a tiny little bit underneath. So something like that. And then we'll just start squeegeeing this down to my finger here, and then we'll lift the finger, go underneath. Okay. Oh, wanting to come back up. That just means there was still slip solution in there, but didn't come all the way up. So a lot of our stretch is still there. So we're just gonna go right back towards that corner. And then now that that just has tack in it, that should stay down. Okay, and then now let's deal with inside the wheel well here. I'm gonna go ahead and get some tack on this. You know, and just make sure when you're cleaning these cars that you get these wheel wells cleaned out really well. Because when this material wraps back in here, you know, you don't want to be bumping into, this is a brand new car and it's so clean, but that's not always going to be the case. I mean, it doesn't take many miles to have this area just really full of dirt. So hit that with the washcloth, and then pressure wash all that out really good. Okay, so just laid over that edge, and then we're gonna take this stuff straight back like this. And then we're gonna go ahead and squeegee this down right here, just like that. Okay, and I'm just drying these edges out now. And then just be careful, you don't want to mess up this edge while you're drying out this one. So keep an eye out. Okay. Moving right along. All right, before we get started on this install, I want to just go ahead and go over with you guys what I do with these areas where they, you know, put the screws through in order to put on the license plate frame. And I just take my blade and I cut those off and get them as close to the bumper as possible. And you see I'm using 2 hands here. This actually is ready to push back this way in case this slips through and breaks loose, because we don't obviously want this to just go forward like that, because it's a lot of possibility of scratching something. Just be very careful. But I like to get those down a little bit so that when we put this piece of film on, they're not just sticking way out and creating like a big air gap in there. And that'll be helpful for the install, and then in the end we will cut around them anyway. Okay, let's get some of this prepared by lifting it up and wetting it down. So we're gonna pull this across this way, and we don't want areas like that staying stuck on here, because you're gonna put a lot of tension right here when you're trying to pull this off. Okay. This goes over, so we wanna go ahead and get this part lifted up as well and get that prepped for peeling this off. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and grab this now. And I go about that far. And I'm gonna fold this like that. Okay. And I'll wait here. Alright, so we've got a decent amount of slipping right now, and it's definitely causing stuff to slide around a bit, so I'm trying to put a little pressure on the edge, get that to kind of stick down, basically just immediate pre-tack. Okay. Okay. So like always, we did edit this in the computer and get rid of the tow hook cover area. That way I can trim it myself. Although if you were putting this on and you didn't edit that, then that would be a spot you definitely want to make sure you get lined up correctly for laying all this down. So let's see, is this gonna roll over and go back to that plastic? It does look like it is. So let's make sure that that's good and lined up. That leaves us a little bit of extra material here to wrap over and back, which is great. You know, if you're cutting this by hand, good luck on that. Because it'd be so hard to cut that and give yourself some to wrap in there. That'd be difficult. It's almost impossible to get a blade in there to trim that. So that's, you know, one nice thing about installing a kit. Now let's go ahead and make sure we're up high enough that we're going to get all the coverage that we need here, and this is hanging over just enough to give us full coverage. We're going to need a little bit of stretching here, potentially. Get a little bit more slip in there. Sometimes what you can do is actually just kind of push this stuff out like that, and instead of doing some stretch, you might be able to just push that stuff out. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to leave this for now, and we're going to go ahead and work this part down, and then we'll work that way around. But let's make sure again that we're lined up, because we don't want to be hanging over the edge really, because all of that is just going to cause us more work, and we'd prefer not to have to do any trimming if we can get away with that. Okay, let's see what we got here. Got a little bit of pre-tacking there, so that caused that to kind of fold over on itself just a little bit. Let's make sure this is still lining up here. Let's make sure we're lining up good here at the bottom. All that's looking really good. So let's go ahead and squeegee all this area down. We'll deal with that in a moment. What that's going to need here is just a tiny little tug on this way, and that'll make sure that gets rid of that. So just a tiny tug, and now that's all laying nice and flat around there. Okay, I need to grab my tack solution, which I should have just had with me anyway. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and make sure that this is going to wrap around correctly. Okay, that looks good. This bottom's lining up really nice. So I'm actually going to put a little tack in here, and then we'll squeegee out everything above that. Okay. Okay, and all I'm worried about right now basically is pushing everything out just on the face here up to this line. So let's bring this kind of down. Okay. Now I think the best thing we should do here is just add tack to that, and then we'll push that down. Again, you can see how it's hanging off here, and that's basically all we need here as well. But we need to make sure that that goes down and stays down, because the more that that starts to pop up, especially after putting some tack solution in there, the more likelihood that you're going to get work marks in the adhesive. And this is, I mean, it's not a black car, but it's basically black. It's got some kind of metal flake in it and stuff. I'm sure it's got some other name than just black, but we do not want work marks in a car that's basically black. That's the most obvious. You gotta bring your A game. That's what I always say when you're working on a black vehicle. All right, so just rolling that around to the back there. We'll worry about that stuff later. This has been sitting for a little bit. Let's see where. So what you want to do is make sure you're kind of moving at taking care of the areas that need to be taken care of first. So this could really just sit here for a while, but we are going to end up with stretch marks if I let this stuff start to dry too much here and then try to pull away from there. So we're going to just get right back up to this now. All right, so let's get all this lifted back up. I just bumped that with the hose, so we'll go ahead and spray that off to make sure I didn't transfer any contamination onto there. Okay, that's quite a bit of stretching. And so what we want to get here for ourselves is a soft line to stretch from, because this did sit for just a little bit. So let's squeegee out about a ½ inch to an inch or so. Okay, and then we'll let that start to set up. Because basically as this starts to dry, when you stretch away from an area that's dry, that's a hard line to stretch from, and then your stretch is definitely going to leave a distortion on that line where it's not stuck and where it's really stuck, and we don't want that. Okay, so that looks good. So I'm just reaching in here and I'm pulling back just a little bit, and you see how that kind of helps that lay down into place better? And then let's just push this stuff out. Make sure that we've got that body line squeegeed out really well. And then, let's see, I need to get a squeegee that has more of like an angled end to it so it can tuck in there. And then I'm going to add some tack solution in there. Getting a little dry. I'm going to make sure and keep some moisture on the material so the squeegee will slide across it. Now let's take this up over the edge. Okay, I'd like to get that to stay down, but we'll see if it's willing to or not. I think it's way back in there. I mean, it's really hard to get the pressure on it, but I think that got it. Okay, a little bit more, push down there. All right, and now we're ready to start stretching away from this area. Let's see what we need. Okay, so we've got about almost a little bit over a ½ inch there, and we just want to stretch as much as we have to. So this, otherwise we're going to overstretch and this won't line up correctly, but that wasn't a good way to add tack solution to that. Let's go ahead and do like this over here on that edge. And then I can put my hand right here and keep some pressure on this so I can get this into place. Okay, and then down here you can see that this is starting to go back that way, so we need to fix that line. Let's get a little bit more tack in here, and then we'll stretch this part over. So it just barely needs to hang over the edge there so it can round that corner, is the way that it looks like they've got this set up. Okay, so that's really good. And then this part, we can let this hang out for just a moment. We need to get over here and start squeegeeing all this down. That's a pretty good sized finger we've got to work with there. So let's bring this down a bit. Let's make sure that goes back plenty far. Let's see here. That's rolling around real nice, but we are hanging over a little bit too much there, so we're gonna have to work with something somewhere though. Okay, if you can see this right here, which I kind of just pushed out with my finger, so we're not gonna worry about that. I'll try talking about something like that at another time. Okay, I'm just getting this body line pushed down really well, and then we'll work our way down from there. Okay. And then let's go ahead and take care of this up here. So I want to go ahead and push this out first. Oh, bummer, look at that. This peels back a little. So let's see. Let's get this pulled back up a little. Should have added some tack solution apparently in that corner there. It's got some pretty good tension on it. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little tack on the edge. We'll flip that over, put that into place like that, and then we'll squeegee this stuff out. Let's make sure we're not leaving any marks with our fingertips, so I went ahead and broke all that loose. And then we can go ahead and squeegee this back out again. Okay. Now let's see what we're gonna do here. So we've got a decent finger. I'm gonna try first just pushing this down with slip solution in it and see what it's willing to do here. Okay, it's definitely got some, you know, fingers that continue to pop up, but it's not terrible. And that tells us what we're working with. So now we'll go ahead and, I don't know, those are good sized fingers. We're gonna get some tack in here. Okay, we're gonna try to take this up slowly and break these fingers up. And so what I'm gonna do is push up and then get my squeegee off of there, because we don't wanna put any hold pressure on this at all, because that will create distortions in the adhesive. Okay. Yeah, that was a decent sized little finger there to push out. Okay, now that we've got that pushed down, let's go ahead and flush all this out with tack, because we do have a couple spots that are continuing to pop back up here. And then we'll take this towel here and we'll push that back in there to dry that edge, and that will hopefully then keep that material from just popping back up. All right, we know that let's go ahead and lift this back up, start there, and then we'll get all this stretched into place here. So all this material needs to come back this way, which is good, because that's gonna help get rid of some of this finger here. And then there's obviously some tension here where the material is trying to pull itself back up. So as soon as we put a little tension on that, it clears that up. So let's get this hanging over the amount it needs to be hanging over on the back side here, and then put that tension down on it till we're lining up really good here across the bottom. So that looks really good, just like that. Let's get some slip on there. We'll go ahead and squeegee this stuff out. And then let's see how we're doing here. Lining up right at the edge. Okay. Let's get a little tack in here now on this bottom. Okay. And I think, well, first let's focus on these guys here, because we want this stuff to all stay down. A little slip on there, and we'll get this pushed out. So I'm just rolling that right over that edge, like it's designed to do. Okay. Get a slide chomp on there. Okay, let's see. So I'm kind of let this stuff sit here for a moment, and then we need to figure out which side we want to push down first. One of these sides needs to go down. And so how are we going to stretch this into place and have it fit the best is really what we're trying to figure out here. And I think this needs to come up a little bit. So I'm thinking we're going to get this side into place, and then we'll bring this over to it. And that should work out really well. One of these sides, like I said, needs to be stuck down really good. Otherwise, when you start bumping these into each other, it just starts popping up. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some tack in all of that as well. And we don't want to put like a ton of stretch on anything here or do anything real crazy, because that can really affect how these two pieces come together. And normally they've got it set up pretty good to just push down and then you know, seam this together. So if you do any like real stretching on this part, then what's going to happen is you're going to have a wavy line here, and that's going to be really hard to get to push down and, you know, bring these two together. Okay, we're just coming up here, and then this part here I'll go ahead and bring down like this and just over that edge a little bit, and that's going down very well. Okay, I'm gonna throw some more tack in here, keep him back on that part, and we'll roll all this back up and over. Let's see what we can do here. Might have to switch over to the red squeegee. We'll see. Let's start back here though. Just working my way towards that corner. Okay, then let's bring this down here. So basically just slide chomp that, tucking that in real nice. Let's bring that, just continue our way down. And then some point in here, instead of coming all the way out of this, which could put a little tension on that, I want to go ahead and try and just push this part down, something like that. And then we're having an issue with that popping back up. So let's get some more tack in there, and let's try getting a squeegee that contours a little bit better in there. Okay, and then I'm going to run over this a couple times here just to make sure that I've squeegeed all the moisture out of that. And then I'll go over this edge one more time and just really look at it and make sure that it's staying down. Okay. Now let's deal with this right here. So this would be an area where this would now be a hard stretch line, but because it's such a minor stretch, it's not going to matter. But that would be an area where I would be concerned about leaving a stretch line if we needed more stretch in this. So I'm just pushing this seam together here. You can see that the bottom likes to come together and the top stays a little bit further apart, which is fine. We just, you know, we got to work with this, and that's no big deal. just means that I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. And where I'm trying to get to is this body line right here. Oops. Okay. We may have to put some tack in here, we'll see. The problem with the tack is that it's really hard then to butt these up to each other if you don't get it like on the first try. Let's squeegee that out. I'm just kind of pushing those together, making sure that I can't feel like a gap there, and I also can't feel that this one is overhanging this one. Okay, and then let's pull this part that way a little bit across the top, and that should help these two pieces here line up with each other much better. And then we'll squeegee that out. The other reason that you want this pushed down first and pushed down really well with some tack solution is because when you're squeegeeing the water out, you can actually squeegee it from here to underneath this part, and we're definitely not trying to do that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add some tack here on this bottom, and then we're gonna squeegee this part down. Come on, there we go. Checking that edge again. I'm going to go right across that body line there, and then bring all the stuff down. And then let's take this stuff up now. So what I want to do is leave this loose here and leave this loose here, and I want to get this into place, because if this could use a little bit of extra material, which means it could stretch a little bit from here and a little bit from here in order to lay down better. And that'll be beneficial. If you work these parts down to right here, then obviously the only place that this can get any stretch is from itself, just in this area. Oh, you guys aren't paying attention. Hopefully the GoPro got that. You guys, you gotta be watching what we're doing. Okay. So first things first, I want to get up to this body line here, and I really want to do a pass like that, but I'm just not sure we're going to be able to get that and get fully into this recess here. So I'm just seeing what I can do. There we go. Okay, so I want to be over that body line there, the bend there, and then I'm going to swipe and hold right on this edge. Now let's go ahead and get this part down. I'm going to hold that with my finger while I push the rest of this out. So let's make sure that we're absolutely not leaving anything underneath the material here. So good passes. Okay. And it's important to put that finger there and hold that so it's not popping back up. Okay, let's get a bunch of tack in that area. And now we can work our way down to our finger. Little chomps there, and then now from there we can work up. Could keep coming down too, it doesn't really make any difference. Okay, looky there. It's just that easy, folks. Good times. All right, we need a battery, you need a battery, and so we're gonna do that and then come right back. All right, we got a little bit of pre-tack in here. Let's go ahead and lift this back, wet that down. Okay. So first thing we want to do is make sure if there is going to be any stretching from side to side, that we do give ourselves a new line to stretch from here. So that will be plenty. There is no stretching from side to side. That's great. I gave ourselves a nice soft line to stretch from there in case there was any stretching. There isn't. That lays down in really nice. Let's make sure that all of this is laying down into place correctly everywhere. And it's looking really good. So no stretching, but the other concern would be that if we just grabbed here and started squeegeeing over, maybe we accidentally put a little bit of stretch into this and then it's hanging over too far. So important that we go over to this side, make sure we know where we're gonna line up and that we're lining up well. This also needs to go up a bit. let's go ahead and get rid of some of this pre-tacking. Make sure that we've got this positioned correctly. Okay, so right about there is good, and right about there is good. Okay, so that's a good spot right there. So I'd like to get this spot right here pushed down so that that can start tacking up. Oh, we're up a little high. So let's see, is that... Oh, that still floats around a little bit, so let's bring that back down to right there. Let's check in here. Okay, we're lining up real good right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and squeegee all of this out. Okay, there. And we'll be able to pause right there. This more than likely just needs to go up a little bit, which should help get rid of those. Let's go ahead and just wet this down because we want to deal with that later. Let's get this middle done. Okay. Let's see what we're working with here. So we're looking good underneath and good on the top. So we're going to go ahead and squeegee this out here towards the middle. And then see how we did kind of create a finger there? That's the thing you want to be careful of, is that, you know, we don't need any stretching, so let's not make a problem for ourselves. Okay, I'll just go ahead, continue taking this to the middle, which I did kind of create a finger for myself, but that's totally manageable. And go ahead and put a little bit more pressure on this now that it's starting to cure up a bit. And then we're going to go ahead, get some tack solution in here underneath. Okay, mist on top. Let's get that part squeegee down to right here, and then we'll go ahead and take this finger up and out, and then we can take all the rest of this down. So we just want to go over that edge. Oops, I pushed a little hard there and it did move this piece of material. I don't know that that probably didn't show up on camera, but I hit right here, which caused this to dig into the material a bit, and then pushed too much pressure on it, which caused it to scoot up. So I just need to scoot that back down. But what we're going to do here is swipe and hold on this top edge. That way we don't continue to have water run down here. Okay, and then we can deal with this whole bottom section later. It's important that we get over here and start working on all this. Okay. Take a look at this. That's all lining up really good. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit further, like right about there. Well, let's actually check this here. So we need to come down just a little bit further. You got to make sure you're making it to your tack points, you know. A little bit of tack there. Okay, just make sure this is rolling over nicely and lining up. Okay, so right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and push this part out because that's got the tack solution in it. Okay, and then we can go ahead and push some of this down, take some of that out that way, and then take the rest of it this way. Okay, start working our way up. And then once we get this stretched into place, we're going to get this down because it's important, like before, that we're down to this edge here where it starts to bend, because we don't want any distortions in the adhesive right here from that sitting like that for too long. Okay, so check for pre-tacking. Okay, so right there is looking like that's all lined up really good. That's lined up good. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of some of this moisture here. So I'm turning the squeegee over because this is a hard, like that's an awkward thing, right? So I want to be able to roll over that edge real easy. Okay, and let's get some more of this down. And then we're gonna get right back down here and work on this, but let's see what we've got going on here. I think that really we could just let that sit and that's gonna be just fine. Let's take care of this lower section. Okay, so I'm gonna get some tack in there. And then right now at this point, you could just continue wrapping that over if you wanted to. I'm gonna move on to other parts that I think are more crucial. There's probably some tack in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and add some slip into that. And then I'm even gonna, well, the thing is if you leave that open like that, that's exposing the adhesive, which I'm eventually going to do, but for now, we'll just lay it down. Okay, so pre-tacking. All right, I'm gonna hold that in place with my finger so that the air can't just continue to travel out there, and then we're gonna push some of this down. Okay, all right, so that isn't gonna work like that. It definitely just wants tack in there. So let's pull this back, sneak tack in there, and let's get this down now. So it's, you know, we already pushed, it's the best way was to push that stuff out like that, was the most easy way. But now that it didn't stay down, let's see, I'm just gonna go ahead and lift this back up because that is the best way to get rid of this water, this extra moisture here. Because you try to run that little thing back, it's not gonna work well. Okay, make sure you got everything out here squeegeed out, and then we'll go ahead and take this back and over this edge. Okay, and then I'm just trying to get a good pass here on this top part as well. And then let's get this guy down. I'm just holding that in place so it doesn't continue to pop up. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and get that down. And now let's start our stretch over to here. Okay, last time I think we put a little tack on this edge. And let's go ahead and pull this over just past the edge here. Make sure that we're good and lined up here. Okay. Now we need to stretch that up a little and into place. We've got a little pre-tacking there. On most color cars that won't be a problem, but on black you can potentially leave that distortion. It's going to be more visible. Okay, push that up into place there and squeegee that out. Okay, now everything else needs to come down now from this line here. So let's check down here, make sure we're rolling over nicely, which we are. And then let's see, should we leave that? Let's leave that for a moment and let's get this edge lined up really well. Okay, you can see here we got a little pressure there, so from holding that down while we are squeegeeing it into place. So I go in and lifted that part up just to make sure we don't get a distortion there. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna be, now at this point, I'm trying to line that bottom up and then get that edge hanging over just the right amount. Okay, that's starting to stick because there is tack in there. We'll go ahead and squeegee that down. Now let's get right back to taking care of all of this. Now that's another one of those spots that's got a little bit of pre-tacking, and Let's see, can we get back there? Yep, okay. All right, so what I want now is to come along this body line here, get that squeegeed out, and we're gonna leave that up there for just a moment while we squeegee some of this out. So we've got to bring everything in towards the middle and then take it down. Okay, and that looks like that's rolling over really nicely, so that's where we need to be, and we're just going to take this all the way down to right there. Let's deal with this top now. Okay, I think last time we just ended up going like right to tack, really. I tried to push it down without tack and that didn't really work out, so let's just go ahead and go straight to tack. Get a little mist on there, and we'll go ahead and start rolling all this stuff back. And remember, when you get to the end there where you're going to stop, get right off of that film. Okay. Okay. There we go. A little slide back there just to make sure that everything is down, and I'm going to go ahead and put a bunch more tack in here because there could have been a little bit of slip left in there, and we want just straight tack on that back edge. Okay, we're popping up a little bit right here. I know that last time we put the towel in there, but I'm not seeing on this one that that's going to be necessary. It looks like that's all staying down, so we're going to just skip that part because we don't need it. All right, let's make sure we don't have any pre-tacking here, and then we'll just go ahead and flush this out with tack solution. Okay, get a little mist on the top here. First things first, let's get past this first body line here and make sure that we're rolled over. See, there's some right there, so let's get that out of there. Then we'll go ahead and push all this down. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and break that finger up, and then we'll go ahead and push that down. Okay, and we'll work our way down. Maybe it's about right there. And then let's go ahead and get this all into place, and then we'll work all this corner down here. So let's get this guy out of the way. Some tack in there. And just like before, this is coming up a little high, or I mean coming a little low, so we're gonna need to bring this up just a little bit. And we're not really trying to put any stretch this way, I'm just holding it to align it up and down. Okay, something like that. We'll let that relax then, and we'll go ahead and squeegee that out. Get past this first body line here. And then we'll work our way to the second one there, right here. Okay, we can do a swipe and hold on the body line. And just continue to take this up. Just make sure, like, you can accidentally leave it water or solution right there. So just keep working that up and out. Just pay attention to that. So easy to do. Because if you do this, you leave a point here where there's stuff in there, right? And then you got to make sure to keep doing it like that. Otherwise, you're just going to leave something behind. Okay, let's push this part down. And then we'll work our way up on this. I'm gonna go ahead and fill that very edge with tack solution and just go over that one more time to make sure that we're staying down. Okay. Here we got a couple little fingers popping up. Those will eventually leave distortions in the adhesive, so let's get those guys down right now. Okay. there's a little bit, let's see, yeah, a little bit here. So we're hanging over just the tiniest bit, and so I'm just going to go ahead and put some tack in there and push that down. Okay. Okay. Okay, and that is just bumping right into it nicely. So I must have got a little bit more stretch this way on this one, because this is really doesn't need any stretch. It's just bumping into it and leaving just a tiny bit of extra material. You can tell that there's a little extra because the finger starts right here. Like, see how the more I push back, the more extra we have and the bigger that gets. So no stretch. Line those up. Kind of putting some pressure on these with my finger to kind of try and get those to stay into place. Nice and lined up. Okay. Maybe we can sneak a little tack in that seam. Maybe not. And then we'll go ahead and squeegee this part out. And you see it's squeegeeing like towards the seam, and that's just to help pull those really tight with each other. Okay, so right there, that's all looking good all the way back. I'm gonna hold that in place and just squeegee away from that a little bit, and that just gives that some more area that's stuck down. And then I'm gonna hold this in place. I'm gonna squeegee this back right here. And if that's starting to come up at all, we'll just sneak a little tack in there, and then we'll get this part pushed down. Okay, now let's get in here. We'll add tack solution to this, make sure our bottom is nice and lined up. And then we'll come right across here, and then we'll bring all this down. Then we'll go up over this body line here, like so, and then let's start working this down now. So definitely gonna need some tack solution in here. Okay, and let's, oh, you guys are not paying attention again. What the heck? Okay, I'll take this back like this. See how that extra pressure I'm putting right here, and that's just to get this card to contour in there. Okay, look at all that slip and tack solution flush out. That's the reason you need to make sure that it's so clean back in there when you're pressure washing. I've got a video on that about how to pressure wash all those edges to make sure that when you flush that water underneath there, it doesn't come back out with a bunch of dirt. And that is a great example of when that can happen. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and work my way up. Now when I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I've got plenty of coverage with the squeegee on this edge. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop there, and we're gonna just focus down here now and make sure that this is all pushed down really well and staying down. Okay. Okay, so tack underneath, some slip on top. let's try going. Okay, now I'm gonna do a pass over it like this, basically just a slide chomp, and then I'm gonna hold that middle down where the most tension is. And that'll just give that a few seconds there to set up and stay stuck down. Then let's work our way up here. Okay. It keeps coming back up. I'm gonna just give it some fresh tack and push that back out. Then we're getting some stuff popping up right here. Still, those little fingers are being a little stubborn. So fresh tack, push those down. And then I'm actually gonna take the towel here and try to dry out that edge. And that should help those stay down permanently. Okay, let's get some tack in this and roll this whole edge over. Stop right there, and then we'll push that down. That, you know, this puts a lot of tension on the material, and it's possible that we're going to stretch a finger into this corner by putting too much tension on the material here. That's why I stopped, and then we roll that over. Okay. Let's check up here. That all looks really good. Let's, oh, look at, we got some water pop back up or travel on down here. And because that's out in the open, we're gonna take care of that first, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this bottom around. And the bottom, we're gonna pull all the way back up to this body line here. Because if we do get a lift line from pulling this back up, it's on the body line, you won't see it. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay, and then what I want to do is kind of push this back down in the middle here and let, you know, this moisture run down and run out, and then we'll be able to introduce tack solution here. So over the edge, it started to come off over the edge here. So swipe and hold on the edge, and then we'll go ahead and get this all pushed down again. Now any moisture that runs down here will be able to just travel to here and run right off. And actually, while we're at it, let's make sure it can come all the way out to the middle and run right out of there. Okay. So I'm gonna get some tack in this. So in a spot like this, you can end up with a little bit of extra material because of the bend there. So let's go ahead and kind of push that down evenly, like that. And then we're just making sure that we're getting a good pressure on there. And that first you want to make sure you're over this body line first, and then wrap that stuff in. Now this area, because this one is, what do you call that? What kind of curve is that called? Outside curve and an inside curve. The outside curves will have extra material. The inside curves then are going to need stretch. So that, I got some tack solution in there. Just keep pushing this down. Let's go over here, work our way back this way. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and look at that. I got a little aggressive with my squeegee there and pop that up. So let's push that finger out. Okay. Let's go ahead and get some tack on that edge. Make sure that we've got nothing but tack on there. And then we'll go ahead and push all this down again. I really want to do a slide chomp, but it's really sticking to that material. caused me to bunch that up over there. So maybe a chomp in this area. Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and start pushing this down now. So when you go over this edge, you got to make sure you have some good pressure down on the tip of the squeegee here, because you don't want to trap any moisture in there. You want to have good pressure on that. Start up here now, start working our way down. This is just an easier way to hold the squeegee and to get good pressure on there. So I'm going to start up here, and then we're just going to do that same thing all the way down. Make sure there's nothing on that body line. Okay, put a little more tack in there. And we'll go ahead and finish wrapping this around. Okay, it's popping up just a tiny bit right there. So I'm going to try adding a little bit more tack to that. And we'll push that down. That's also something that we're going to be, double checking and making sure it stayed down when we get to the heat seal process. All right, let's get all this pulled up. Make sure there's nothing dry here. Let's see how this rolls in. So again, this is an inside corner, so the material is going to need to stretch as it goes over that. So I'd like to get this pushed down first. I'm going to go ahead and add some tack to that, and we're going to just pull back on this and get this tack down to this next body line here. And I can hold it at that body line. Okay, and then we can push some of this down all the way to that body line while we're holding this down. Oh, I left a tiny little bit of water there. That's a bummer. Oh, good, it pushed out. Very easy to do on those edges. Tiny bit right there. Just pull that back. Get that out right now. Okay, now let's get tacking all of this here. And then I'm gonna kind of work my way over to that from like right here. I need one of these sides stuck down before I try to push this stuff down, because now the only spot popping up that we're fighting is this whole part, instead of fighting both sides popped up like this. So I'm gonna go over that, push it down, and then hold that with my finger. Try to get some more tack in there. And then we'll go ahead and take this down some more. So we can get this to stay down now, then it, from both sides it's not trying to pop back up, which will be helpful. Okay, I left a little bit of moisture right there. Fortunately, it's still real early in the squeegeeing that out, so I was able to just use a ton of pressure and pull that little water out. Okay. Go ahead and dry out some of that edge and move on. Okay, I'm gonna come all the way over to here now, so let's pull this back and just get a bunch of tack solution in here. Flush out all that soapy water. A little mist on top, and then we'll go ahead and slide that, just slide across, squeegee that out. Okay. And as long as you're down to that next body line, you can go ahead and chomp all this down, or slide chomp it. Just make sure you're getting everything out of that. Squeeze it out. Okay. And we're gonna go ahead and jump right over here now, and we're gonna get this the same, push down the same way. So put a little tension on, or just pushing. Basically all I'm doing is pushing back. I am pulling just a tiny bit to make sure that that lays flat. Okay, we'll squeegee away from there. And I'll go ahead and hold that down with my finger, and we'll go ahead and start to get the rest of this down. Let's do a swipe and hold on this guy. And let's get a little bit more tack in here, some fresh tack. So because this is pushed down, this time I started on the bottom and worked my way up, and because that's pushed down, it's tacked down, we're not fighting it trying to pop up from this side as well. So okay, and then we'll get that pushed all the way back. All right, let's go ahead now and trim around these. Once those are trimmed, get tack solution in that edge. And then we'll go ahead and squeegee that all out. And I like to keep this fairly close, although it doesn't really matter that much. You want to be far enough away that you're not hitting any of the area that is going sticking out still, because that'll just make the film not want to lay down right there. Let's see. Seems like I did not. Okay, it did cut through. Good. That part did not, though. Okay, so from right there over to there. Perfect. All right, and then let's go ahead and cut out around this. So I want to come right to the edge, almost. Let's see. Should I get myself a new blade, freshy fresh? And then let's go ahead and come on down. Okay, and then we'll come to where I think this ended. And we'll come around this part on the top. And I really would prefer to roll this stuff in, but it's just not going to happen on this car. Okay. Let's see where we can get this to break loose. Wasn't getting any squeaking, and I wasn't getting a super good bite on the material, but let's see if we still got it. I'm gonna go ahead and try to find my cut mark, which would be right about there, and then cut out. Yeah, I don't know. We might need another blade here. Let's see if that gives us something that we can grab a hold of and get this to tear. Nope. Okay. Make sure we're not lifting that up at all. Felt like it lifted up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and get some tack solution in there and push that down. And I'm going to snip off a couple blades this time. All right, let's try this again. Huh? Second time's a charm? What do you think? Oh, I'm definitely biting into it more this time. You'll be able to tell eventually once you start trimming paint protection film enough, you can feel whether the blade is just dragging across the material like as if it was a butter knife, or if you're actually digging into it a little bit, like there's a tiny bit of grip there. This is a very awkward, hang on. Okay, right there. Perfect, okay. You'll be able to tell. And let's see if any of this other cut, it wasn't. Okay, I was just double checking to make sure that that cut didn't actually come through, or wasn't that our previous cut worked or not. It did not. Okay, it's kind of a funky angle, so I'm gonna start right here. Because anytime I'm doing this, I can't keep my angle because I'm running into this piece up here. So I'm gonna start right here. Okay, and then let's see if we can get this to tear over so we know where we stopped, and we can start right at that same spot. Getting a little squeaking now, which is nice. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and throw some tack solution in that edge. And then there's not really much to squeegee down, so I'm gonna go ahead and just push this towards the center here. Like this, and then the towel will immediately dry that edge out. Beauty! Just checking all the edges, make sure everything's staying down. Looks like we're hanging over just a tiny bit right there. Just drying that edge out. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and run my finger across here. Make sure there's no fingers popping up. Okay, nope, we aren't. That was just an optical illusion from a reflection. Okay, do have a couple fingers there, so let's get rid of those. So we're gonna need tack solution in there. And then we'll use this black card here, which should give us a little bit more pressure on that edge. I'm gonna go into just underneath the back, past the headlight where you can't see where I'm pushing, and I'm gonna swipe and hold right there and push down on that. Okay, and then let's take our towel here and we'll stuff that in there. We can pull the squeegee out and try that edge out. Okay. All right, so that can sit there and dry while we work on some other pieces, and then we will come back and heat seal all that. All right, let's go ahead and heat seal these edges on this bumper. So it's the next day, and I know we've got some more parts to do on this bumper, but I think I might actually throw this into a separate video that'll be more specific to bulking, because I don't on most of these vehicles, you're not going to find these painted. So yeah, I think we'll do a separate video on these two pieces. Well, and these ones, I guess, as well. This one I already put some paint protection film on. Came out really good, so shocker. I don't know why I have to say that. Came out really good. It went really well. I guess I could say that. It went pretty smoothly. Did some things a little bit different than I normally do when I'm cutting these. And I'll have to, if you take a look at that video, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, because I'll go over all that. I just saw there was a little dot right here underneath the paint protection film, and actually there was a little chip in the paint right here, very minor one where a rock had hit, and so there was a little silver around it. And I remember picking at that with my finger when I was cleaning the bumper really well, and just wanted to put a little heat on that and push it down to get rid of that silver around the edge of it. All right. So all these edges I can't reach, we're just gonna warm them up, and then I'll use this tool to push them down. Okay. All right, so let's pick a spot here. We've already done the inside of this now. Now we'll pick a spot and we'll go around this whole bumper. And we're just warming up this edge and then pushing that edge down. And this one wraps in just a tiny bit under here, so I'm sticking my fingernail in there to make sure that I'm getting the edge of it. That edge is running across the top of my fingernail. And then also make sure that when you're doing this, that you're really careful, or at least aware of the other parts that have paint protection film on them. That's going underneath there a little bit further than I can reach with my fingernail. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this tool here to put a little pressure on that. We don't want to damage this piece of material while we're heat sealing this one. And so we're just warming that edge up, pushing it down. If you feel that the film is starting to get a little tacky, that means you're getting it a little too warm, and you'll want to go ahead and move faster. You'll first want to get the heat gun away, and then you have to decide if you're going to move faster or if you're going to turn the heat down. And so I've got some silver edges here, and what you're going to notice when you put a little bit of heat on those and push them down, that they go to looking black like the rest of the material. And so that's one way that you can tell that this stuff is going down and staying down, is if that silver edge goes away where it's still sticking up just a tiny bit, because these edges here are just wrapping just the tiniest bit on a couple spots. So let's heat up this seam here, and then I'm going to take this tool here and I'm going to go with the seam. Do not go work against the seam. Too much risk of damaging it. Okay, and then we'll heat this up all the way around. I can see a little bit of silver in there. That just means the very edge of this material is not sticking down, and this is part of what you want to take care of with this process. Here we go. All right, and way back in there, we'll go ahead and run this over that. And then I did earlier trim this part a little bit. This part was bumping into this, and I was able to get it to tuck underneath there, but the problem is that this plastic piece here is so tight up against the bumper that it just kept bunching up, and that means that if we do get it to stick down, it's going to have a failure once it's out on the road eventually right there, because this piece is going to move around a little bit like that, and it's going to bunch that film up and cause a problem, cause it to pop up. So I just went in and took care of that by trimming it off. Okay, we're warming this up. Now if I have a lot of edge hanging over, which I don't really here, then I want to get that pushed down first before I put heat on it. Otherwise, when you warm up that material, it gets real, like it turns and it does its own thing because of the tension that's on it, and it might try to stick itself down. You may burn the edge, or when you're pushing across it like this, you may wrinkle that edge up. And so it's best if it's really hanging off of there to push it down before you put heat on it. But that was just hanging off just a tiny bit, so wasn't concerned with that. Okay, so we got back in there where this rolls around to. Okay, I've got a tiny bit of silver in here. I'm not sure if you can see that. And what that is a distortion in the adhesive. I must have had a finger there like this. And so I left a little silver in there. And so what we can do is we can hide that by warming it up a little and then just massaging it down. And what that's going to do is hide the silver. But there will be a very, very minor distortion in the appearance of the material now if you get it the right angle, because of that. The distortion is there because we distorted the adhesive a little bit, and that's what causes the silvering. There's a little bit of basically damage to the adhesive, and so we shouldn't expect that to be perfect. When you get at a certain angle, you will be able to tell. I don't know if you can see that at all. Let's see if we can maybe catch that in the camera. If you can see that, that's permanent. So we want to minimize those type of things, but you can hide them a bit if you do accidentally leave one. Obviously black, it shows up on the most. It's a tough color to work with for stuff like that. Okay, and then this material goes underneath this headlight a little ways, which I think is great. Although if you have a problem back there, you're in trouble. So that part's not great. But it is awesome that that line, you know, the edge of that film is hidden down there. It's also awesome that it's hidden back in there as well. So it's not going to catch dirt and dust over time or wax. This part of this adhesive is popping up here, and it just left a little adhesive on there. I'll have to get some rubbing alcohol to help get that off of there. Okay, let's go around this guy here. Oh, I'm using that same part. I got adhesive right there I need to clean up. Womp womp. Just be careful with that very edge. Back in here, you know, I mean, this is starting to fit fairly tight on there, and we don't want to be pushing across this with that edge really tight, because you will bunch the film up and damage that edge. And then, I mean, there's nothing besides cutting it way out here, something that you're going to be able to do about that. So just be real careful. Okay. And right here again, we've got the fender that we're going to be pushing down at the same time. You know, and so when I come in for the morning, I want to make sure and heat seal all these edges that are dry, that anything I installed the day before gets heat sealed first thing, and then I can get to work on installing more pieces. So let's see, did we get center that, center around? Okay. Don't think I got these parts yet, so let's go ahead and finish this up. Can't reach in there with my finger, but I can see that that's silver. I don't know if that shows up at all. I'll go ahead and wrap it down with this, and I'm not putting a ton of pressure with this. I'm just trying to glide over that edge and push it down. All right, let's double check this seam here. Just gonna go over it gently, and then I'll add more pressure if necessary. I might as well go around these, huh? All right, terrific. Well, I appreciate you guys taking a look at this video. If you found anything helpful, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content, and we'll see you guys on the next one.